I'm Tom McMillan. Join me as I interview professional sports people on their journeys making it pro. I'm on a mission to explore the mental strength and dedication required to make it in professional sport. If you like what I'm doing, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Hope you enjoy the episode. John, that's his own. Thanks for joining me on Making It Pro. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and obviously your experience as an agent and your experience dealing with players, I mean, all over the world is going to be invaluable. But what I do is I make this about you, and so what I want to do is start off with really the kind of main first question I usually go with, which is, what's the earliest football memory that you recall for yourself personally?
Wow, just going back a bit there, Tom. Come on.
I know the feeling.
Look, I've just been switching this phone off, by the way. I just realised that was switched on with somebody phoning me. Look, quite easily, I just came right to my mind was standing at the pitches, my local pitches where I came from, in a street called Clyde Street, and a wee fishing village at the east end of Glasgow called Easterhouse.
Yeah.
And I remember, not being very good at football, Tam, and that was a
Yeah.
fact. But I loved it. I just loved to be involved. And I always remember being one of the last ones to get picked. Remember you done a tic tac,
Aye.
and they were all like, oh, who's taking him? And I either only got a game because if I played in goals or if there wasn't enough people, or back in the days if you had a ball and now and again
Aye.
you had
They
a ball,
needed it.
I got a game. So my earliest memory was that everybody played football. It was just
Yeah.
there was nothing else,
Yeah.
and then you had to quickly get yourself up to speed or be involved with it. Or it was very rarely was there no somebody that wasn't playing football. Time.
It's the same for me, John. When I think back to the days, that was the congregation. There was no, obviously social media and computers now weren't in existence in the times. It was anywhere you could make a pitch, you made one, and anywhere you could get a ball. I remember in actual fact sticking a bladder back in and trying to sew a ball.
I
You
can
know what I mean?
imagine.
Wayne's wouldn't remember it and try to, and sort of it came, you went to hear it, and you headed the joint between the bladder and the stitch, and you're marked on the side of your face,
I
It,
find fascinating talking about balls. Tam, sorry to interrupt you. I find
no, no, no.
fascinating, and it really. I think, wow, when I drive into my housing area here, right, and I look around and there's balls outside, just in the street.
Yeah,
There's a ball sitting there, and I want to
yeah,
jump out my car and grab it.
I
But
know, I
because
know.
instinct was if you saw a ball on its own, that was
Aye,
amazing.
aye,
So my earliest memory was obviously as a kid, five,
yeah,
6, 7, playing football and with all the older ones. And if you got a game, great. And it was just everything was football, football, football. Even though it
yeah.
was mince at it.
And did you take an interest in watching it, John, and going to watch football?
I did, I did. I had a wee bit of a fascination of going to watch football from a very, very early age. My dad took me to see a game, Celtic versus Clyde. I think it was Clyde, and I remember I was in a famous area called the Jungle, which a few of the readers might know about,
Yeah,
heard of, and I was just fascinated with this atmosphere,
yeah,
fascinated with what was happening around about me. Just the whole journey of
yeah.
going to the game, being there on your dad's shoulders, getting lifted over. I wasn't so keen on the smell of the urine and standing on cans, and that bit comes back to me now and again when you
Yeah.
get that smell. But I do remember how the atmosphere and how I felt, and that made me think, wow, I want to go and see as many games as possible. So I sort of
Aye.
became a wee bit infatuated with that.
And through the sort of enjoyment of watching football and participating in football yourself, what sort of what led you to sort of take the initial steps into having a career in football yourself?
It was quite interesting. Again, we're going back. This is me into my 31st year, Tam, so it's a long
Yeah,
time. And the football agency was just starting to, come together about people. You just barely heard that it was somebody that done a deal for somebody when I
yeah,
started in. And I thought to myself, that's quite an interesting business. But I had a wee bit of affiliation with some footballers because I used to be in financial services and I was dealing with
yeah,
high net worth individuals. And one or two of them said, that might be a route that would suit you. dealing with people, finances,
Yeah.
contracts, and I did a wee bit of experience and all that. And I'd done a wee bit of research, and then one or two people asked me to help them with a deal, and I got a wee taste for it, and that's how it started.
Aye. And seeing the in the early days, I mean, obviously now, you hear the likes of, um, the big and massive deals, and people talk about obviously some of the deals Ronaldo's agent and the kind of numbers and figures that are all taunted about, as is the case for everything associated with football in today's market. But seeing the days, John, I mean, when you were setting out, was it sort of bridged over still having like, your kind of 9 to 5 job and trying to find a way to make this work? Or was it as conscious as that? Were you just sort of saying, we'll see how this goes?
Well, let me tell you, when I first started, I was still working. I transitioned from
Yeah.
being in financial services, and it took me a couple of years to get to realise, right, I think I can do this, because it's not the type of job that you wake up one morning and go, right, I'm going to
Aye.
become a football
That's it.
agent, and then 6 months later, you're dealing with Cristiano Ronaldo. It just
That's
doesn't work
right.
like that.
That's right.
So I took a transition period, and I recommend anybody that's coming into this game, like, just jumping in with 2 feet. There's no many people make it right away. They need a lot of help and assistance, and transitioning from whatever the job you're in or the business you're in just now to becoming a football agent takes a bit of time, I have to tell you.
Yeah. And see for yourself, I mean, obviously, again, like I know, you've now developed an academy where you're educating young agents, and I see so many things you do on LinkedIn, what you share with people, the quality of the information you share. But a lot of that wouldn't have been available then, John. Were you kind of on your own? I mean, did you have a lot of support or guidance or sort of encouragement, or were you just kind of having to, find out as you went, kind of thing?
Tam, I was flying with the seat in my pants.
Aye.
There was no such thing as a course or information or somebody to go and phone and say, how does this work? Where do you go? What do you do? Uh, when I first started, I didn't have anybody to get any information from, and I
Yeah.
had to had to work it out myself. And when I'm speaking to new agents just now, and mentoring them, and I'm saying to them, look, I wish there was somebody like me in that period, because I would have
Yeah.
transitioned quickly. I wouldn't have made the massive amount of mistakes I've made.
Yeah.
As long as you learn from them, then that's a positive thing.
Aye.
I made a lot of mistakes at the beginning, and I'm trying to teach people that don't make those to make sure they don't make those mistakes.
Aye.
And that's the benefit of having a mentor.
And obviously, as you say, I mean, having a background in financial services meant that you could confidently sort of, manage the dealings of contracts. And I've seen them myself. I've done a few of them myself, and it's a complex thing to be sort of managing somebody else's life. Most footballers, especially nowadays, all they want to do is eat and sleep and play football. So if they've got somebody like yourself they can trust, and they can wholeheartedly know that it's going to be looking after their best interests, I mean, I think the introduction agents have been a fantastic thing for the game, and it's a good mediator for the club as well as the player when maybe tensions are running or whatever. But as you were going through that, how did you find the early stages starting to deal with clubs? Because again, a lot of early sort of the more experienced managers, they didn't really welcome agents in their days, John, did they?
I'm going to tell you, one of my first deals with was a famous guy who hated agents, and he gave me a lot of stick. It was Brian Clough.
Yeah.
And it was actually my second deal, I think. And I went to meet Brian. I actually went down to do a deal with a young player from Dundee United called Ray McKinnon. And I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember. It was in
I do.
1992 when he just started the Premier League.
Yeah.
And Brian Clough wasn't expecting an agent to be there, but actually he wasn't there. He was on the phone. He was on holiday in Mallorca. So I was dealing with his assistant manager, and he was really nice. But he said, but Brian wants to speak to you. He's not here. He's in Mallorca, and I'm in his office, right? And he came on, and it was a few expletive words gone there. Hey, what are you doing here? Why does he need an agent? Blah, blah, blah. And that was a baptism of fire, to say the least.
Yeah.
But that made me quickly realise, oh, wait, now not everybody likes us,
Aye.
and you had to adapt as you go along. And there's managers who really, really appreciate agents and what they do.
Yeah.
And some managers just don't agree with you, and some
Aye.
owners, everybody's different. But
Yeah.
they're a necessary thing in the business, in my opinion.
I think for everybody concerned, I think it cuts, like in any of these situations, if you sort of take the representation on behalf of the club and the manager, then what you're doing is you're able to get to the point quicker than they would do, I think, just dealing with a player on their own. And I think also for a player, the hardest thing in the world is to try and negotiate on your own behalf
Sure.
and to know your own value, I think, for any human being. And so having an agent there, personally, I've always thought, and I know obviously I've spoke to you about my own son starting out in his own wee journey at the minute. Even for myself, maybe having the knowledge or the ability to kind of, argue his point if it came to it, but he's still my son. The emotional attachment makes it really, really difficult. And I think somebody like yourself, an independent agent, a non-family member for a lot of, young players where their dads get involved and their mums get involved, that can be a challenge as well. I mean, how have you found that dealing with families over the years of players?
Well, I think you've used a great word there, is emotion, because under no circumstances should a parent be, in my opinion, be at that meeting. Because you're sitting there as a parent and you believe he's a great player and you believe he should be on X amounts of money. And as soon as that chief executive gives you a bit of stick saying he's not valuing that, he's not this, you're right away on the back foot and you would be having a go. It's just natural. It's your kids. A couple of times I've had parents there, and I always say, look, guys, I don't think you should be at this meeting. You go and do what you're doing on the parenting side up to a certain level, and that will keep the emotion out of it, and I'll get in and get him the contract that he duly deserves. And dealing with parents is a very, very difficult part of the business. I'm sure you'll know that, maybe either dealing with clubs or whatever. You've got your emotional attachment, and dealing with the parents, for me, is a big part of the business. You want to be involved, you want to be all together to make it all happen for their son or daughter. But when it comes to making the decision about doing the deal, then most definitely I wouldn't have them at meetings.
I think again, as you've picked up there, I mean, I think it's impossible not to be emotionally attached, but that in itself presents a problem, John, doesn't it?
Certainly does. It's the same if anybody's talking about my sons or it doesn't matter even if they're right, you still get a wee bit like, wow, wait now, this isn't right. So for me, I try to keep the emotions out, especially going to do a deal. And look, not just a deal. It's also when you're dealing with the parents about their future, what they're doing and how they're going forward. And I was just talking to somebody today. He's got a player at Glasgow Celtic, and he's an ex-player and a father, obviously. And he's saying that he finds it difficult not to, as a player even, start to talk to the coaches and giving them stick and the way he sees it. It's very, very difficult because of the emotions that are attached.
It's funny because I saw obviously that there was a comment of Lionel Messi saying that when he goes to watch his own son playing, and he says he just stands there as a parent, and he was asked why he doesn't comment, and he said, "I'm there as a parent. I'm not there as a coach." He's got enough to take in hearing it from his coach without hearing it from me as well. I saw a video a few years ago that the FA released, and even as a parent myself, and at the particular time, I was coaching the team that my own son was playing in. So I was sort of directly involved, and I was directly involved with schoolmates and other kids that I knew the parents well. So there was a complete emotional attachment. But I saw this video. I was doing one of the FA courses, and the wee boy's on the park, and the parents screaming at him, and the coach is screaming for the side, and it's a mixed message. They're screaming different things, and you see the wee boy looking at one and looking at the other, and you see the confusion in his face. And I remember feeling horrified, saying, I hope that you don't do that to your own kid. And I think it's an important realization that parents know the roles, that their role is, as you say, be a parent and leave the other aspects for the professionals like yourself and the coaches and people to do. And again, I think that it goes back to why your job's so important, because you are a professional. It's not somebody's mate. It's going to, I can negotiate a deal for you because like you're selling a flat. It's, you know what I mean? You're dealing with somebody's life, and it can be a short life, as you know better than me, John. It's important that the right decisions are made. And so see, as you started to then progress, Was there a sort of turning point where you felt, right, I could do this for a living? This is something I could do full time.
It's a good question. It's a good question. There was a period where I done quite a big deal, and I felt comfortable doing the deal. I felt comfortable for the way I dealt with the player and the club. The club was really happy. The player was really happy, and obviously, I eventually got paid for it. And I thought, right, I've done that right. I think I could do this
Yeah.
job to a real serious professional and transparent level where I'm thinking, yeah, I like this. And one of the biggest things out of it was the satisfaction I got from the player more than anything of saying, you know what, I was expecting this and you got me that
Aye.
because of my value. And I thought, right, because the money will come to anybody that works hard for players. The money
Yeah.
will come if you're honest and transparent and you put the time and effort in. And in this particular occasion, the penny dropped me. I went, wait, now I've not only have I got this guy a better deal in a longer term than what he was expecting to get, we've got the value that we think is right for the player. Him and his wife and his kids should, with this one deal, believe it or not, in the Premier League, get themselves into a good financial position. I've helped somebody in life here. And the satisfaction I got from that was good. But then, of course, then when they phone you and tell you this is what your commission is as well, then the satisfaction and the financial benefits made you think, right, I'm having a go at this.
Do you know what though, Joe? I've always, because of the nature of my job, obviously we've known each other in sort of passing terms for a long,
Yeah.
long time. You know that I've ran hairdressing salons, employed people, and worked with people, ran an academy all my life, and I've always been really little. I'm always really conscious of how people say a thing or in the manner they say it, and I think it says a lot about you the way that you answered that there. The last thing you mentioned was money. It was about realising that you'd handled the club in a professional manner, you had acted for the player in the right manner, and you'd been able to bring the deal together. And I think when you look at football agency, and obviously even in our own discussions, I look at football in great depth, and it's very easy. Everybody wants to be an agent now because of the money that they think they see, but in actual fact, the guys who've got the integrity to do the job for the right reasons and do the right thing for the right reasons, which is namely why you've been in the game for so long. And I'm not saying that to blow smoke up your ass. That's just a fact. I mean, you wouldn't be at it over 30 years if it wasn't any other way. But I think that integrity can be lost in a lot of people where money takes precedence, and sort of that satisfaction of realizing, because I've made somebody else's life more comfortable, I could actually make a living out of this. Honestly, I mean this sincerely. That really struck me as you were answering that. Realising what you'd done for an individual player made you realise you could actually do it professionally and make a living. But at no time was the priority money. The money, even the two ways you answered it, the money was at the end of it, which is it's fantastic. It's fascinating.
See, when I'm teaching these new agents, I'm saying, look, guys, of course, you're the big bright lights of being in the newspapers and the radio and the telly, and then seeing agents turning up in helicopters and getting that crazy money. I says that does happen, right? That does happen. I'm saying, but the very first thing you must get as a solid situation is think about who comes first. No, you, the player.
Yeah.
You look after the player, you do the job right, and sometimes it takes years to get paid when you're looking after players, and that's for sure. But it'll come back to you in abundance financially. Your main solid rock is that you look after the player; they come first. And any time when I've been in to do a deal, and I've done hundreds and hundreds of them, I don't talk about the commission, my commission. I don't talk about it to the end, and then say, right, okay, now that you're happy with it, Tammy's just signed. You're just about to sign. You're happy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how the remuneration, about how I should get paid. Whereas a lot of the agents I've been speaking to, current agents, and it's understandable with the money that's involved. They're kind of going, oh, what am I getting for this deal?
Yeah.
The last thing that we've been involved with. So it's something I'm trying to teach people, but it's not easy when they just see these bright lights of £100,000 commissions and everything. But the bedrock of the business is, the foundation is, look after your player. He comes first. The rest will follow if you do it right.
And obviously, John, as you started to, do deals at that level, and you were looking after players at that sort of standard, and that, you talk about the Premiership, and how the Premiership's exploded in football, and how, what it's become and grown into. But did you then find that obviously one player was recommending another, and your own sort of stable, if you like, started to develop naturally?
It's just like any other business, Tam. But if you're doing a job professionally and correctly, the word gets about.
Yeah.
And I didn't phone players for chasing players. I would be getting a call saying, "Listen, so and so was sitting next to him in the dressing room today. He says that he's not got an agent, or he fell out with his agent, or we'd like to have a chat with you." And that's how I got my business, all through recommendations. It's a bit like somebody coming to you and saying, "Oh, what a job he's done, by the way." And they go, "Where'd I find him?" So it's just the same thing. It's just the same job. It's just the same job.
No, it's, again, I mean, obviously, the big reason that I'm doing this particular project is to try and, look at sort of how young players envisage all the steps of their journey. What does somebody like yourself look for in a player? You could maybe go and you look at the really sad ones for me, like the boy Ravel Morrison, and the amount of players that have had all the talent in abundance, and maybe just not been managed specifically well, or not been guided the right way, and it's all went up in smoke when they've maybe made their first 3-year deal. But that's, you've not really made it till you've really made it. That's you're only in the door at that stage. But some of the kids, obviously, again, with the money involved, it goes to their heads. How do you find maybe what you look for in a player, but obviously trying to manage the expectations of a young player when maybe they are bursting onto the scene? How do you find that as a test?
When I'm going to meet a young, in particular, a young player from the beginning, it's a real analysis about that person more first and foremost. So I'm asking leading questions to him. I'm not just going to say, "Here, there's a contract. Do you, let's get on with it." Even though I've seen maybe he's a good player, I want to find out, what he does in the background after, especially after his situation of training. I want to know what his environment's like. I want to know what his desire is. And look, I've never came across a footballer that's made it to the highest level who hasn't had that real desire to become a football player. We've seen some in the past who fell by the wayside, and we could name hundreds of them, Tam, from all over Glasgow in particular. But I look at their eyes. This might sound stupid, and I go, "Right, okay, how far do you want to go?" And you can normally tell they go, if they're excited and they start telling you, "You know what? Right now I'm at St Mirren, but then I want to go to Rangers, and then I want to go to Arsenal, and I want to follow that Scotland strip." And by the way, I can envisage me at the World Cup. When I hear that type of chat, I'm ticking the box there. It's the desire when I'm looking at a young person, and there's none that I've seen that have not made it to a top level who haven't had that word is desire. So when I'm going to look at them, I'm looking at him. I'm also looking at, if it's a young one, I'm also looking at the desire of the parents. And I know there's a big thing in there about the parents around about it. I heard you saying in one of your podcasts, that a lot of these people down south, I think it was your Crystal Palace situation, that they're depending on them financially. That worries me, because that puts a lot of pressure on them. But for me personally, I want to go and find out as much as I can about that boy, to see whether or not I think he can he will make it. I mean, I'm assuming when I'm going to meet him, we've scouted him 3 times.
The talent's there.
The talent's there. But I want to know the person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And see, even at that stage, Joe, I mean, obviously the other difficult thing, for the rest of us going into our work every day, it'll vary a wee bit, but you could begin in dealing with maybe somebody. I mean, I don't know how young you would necessarily talk to play, but say 16 or 17, and you might be trying to get somebody their final contract at 31 or 33, who's got 3 kids and a mortgage and a car and a whole different range of responsibilities. Do you ever feel the onus of that? I mean, that even for your sort of own self, to try and detach yourself from the concerns, especially if it's a player that you've looked after for a long time. Do you find it hard to kind of not go overly involved? Like, I need to try and get him an extra year or whatever it is to secure.
If it's a player you've looked after all your career, and look, on every occasion, I try to do the best for. I'm representing the player. So I want to get the maximum I can for him. And of course, like you're emotionally attached to your son, I'm emotionally attached to that player if he's been with me for 15 years.
Yeah.
And if I'm going in for his last one, that's pressure because, you want to get him the longest term contract with the most amount of money. And by that stage, he'll know exactly what he should be getting. The boy at 16 doesn't know what's happening. You'll be an experienced pro. So that is pressure. That is pressure. But with experience, you generally know you should be getting them as good as what any other agent could ever have gotten. And I'm comfortable with that. When I'm going into a meeting to do a deal, I'm comfortable that I'm going to get as good a deal as anybody that's out there. Only because I've been around the block a few times, Tam.
And seeing that, I mean, obviously, and it is, John, and again, I'm saying this absolutely sincerely. I mean, I've known you and known of you for decades, and I've followed you and the likes of on the LinkedIn, some of the posts you make. You can see how much it still matters to you, even after being in that type of industry that can be challenging, personally challenging. But 3 decades later, and your enthusiasm still the same. But has there been times during it where you've thought, this is too much, or it's stressful, or was there a point of saying where I'm going to need help or a bit of support to run this? It started to maybe escalate.
No, definitely, Tom. There was periods where I'd go, what am I doing here? There'd be periods going, Jesus, what am I doing sitting here? My family, I'm on the other side of the world, and my family's sitting at home. There would be periods when you're going, oh no, that bank account doesn't look great. There'll be periods where people are champing your door saying, where's your salary? Because they don't care where the money's coming from. You being a business owner will understand it. All they want to know is, am I getting paid in the 31st? And you want to think about the PAYE and whatever it may be. Like any business, there's stresses and strains. But in football, it's not, I'll say this, it's not a job, it's a vocation. I have to tell you. If I'm talking to somebody here right now and they're saying, I want to become an agent, and you want to clock off at 5:30, forget about it. Forget about it. Your phone has to be open the whole time. So there's lots of stresses and strains that come with that, with your family life, definitely, and you got to be able to manage both of those. And I've had lots of ups and downs and peaks and troughs, trust me.
And now, obviously, with the I mean, it was interesting when we spoke over the Christmas period, and you look at how that's evolved. Everybody just expects it and accepts it now. But when you and I were younger, there was no such thing as a transfer window. But now, obviously, one of the windows is over a Christmas period. I mean, how do you find the pressures of that, having to deal all through the festive period with a family?
Well, I'm very fortunate that my wife knows exactly what the job's all about. And if it was Christmas Day and I had to go and do a deal, which has happened, then albeit it's only happened to me once, so don't feel sorry for me. In 30 years, it's happened to me once, and I remember it was not one but two players, and I'm negotiating it on Christmas Day, and it was actually with Gordon Strachan a long time ago on the phone. Fair play to him, he was doing the same. But the point I'm making is that you have to be there during those periods. That's your job.
Yeah,
your wife said, look, your best customers turned up at 7 o'clock, and you don't go, oh no, I can't do him. No, he's my top customer. I'm sorry, darling, I'll be home in 2 hours, and you're away. It's the same as any other job, but I have to say it's not a 9 to 5 job.
I mean, there's a thing you obviously mentioned, Gordon Strachan, who's here. I've got actually, but over the years, I did a lot of players here, as you know, and a lot of different people have been celebrities for different reasons. But I always found fundamentally, John, when it came to lifting a pair of scissors, it was just a head of hair. So I never ever, had the great luxury of doing Sarah Ferguson when she was still married to Prince Andrew, and she was lovely, actually, a really lovely lassie. But it was still just a head of hair, when it boiled down, I was still just doing my job. So I never became really overawed by the person. I was just stuck to the task. Did you find that? I mean, obviously, it's difficult because almost everybody that is a client of yours or everybody that you would seek to represent the clubs that, you see this week, Ange Postecoglou and Michael Beale getting interviewed with the League Cup coming up on Sunday. And, these are people that's people's heroes, and, their every word's being hung upon. How have you found then having to go and negotiate with people like that over the years? Again, will you be able to detach and just say, no, I'm here to do a job?
Well, just like you're saying, it was the same thing when I was dealing with that famous chairman or that famous manager or that famous footballer. At the beginning, it was a wee bit like, wow, I'm actually doing business with this guy I saw on the telly.
Aye.
Or wow, I'm actually representing somebody that, 20, 40,000 people are singing about
Yeah.
me. He's my
Yeah.
player. At first, I got, it was a wee bit like, right, this is really, this is heavy duty. But as time goes on, she said, it's another head of hair. It's just another manager, another
Yeah.
player, not just the part of your whole being. But
Yeah.
as you grow, as you go on, you forget about the fact about they're famous. It's just you've got to do the job exactly as you said.
Aye. Aye. No, that's it. You're there to represent who you're there to represent, and regardless of who's in the kind of circle of that, you're sticking to doing your job. And
See,
see over
see
the
if it was just even a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, and I'm in
yeah,
there focused on, because I've got a set plan every time I go into a meeting. I've got a
aye,
set thing. It's like,
yeah,
I know where I'm going to start the process. I know what's in the middle, and I know how to finish it. And it's only because it's like it's in there forever. And
aye,
whether
it's
you're a
ingrained.
17-year-old that's signing for all of them, or whether it's
Yeah,
somebody that signed for Real Madrid, it's the same
yeah,
process that I had.
yeah,
And for me, I'm in that zone. I'm in that zone of getting what is the best contract I
yeah.
can get for that person.
Aye. I mean that's phenomenal, John. I think that's a great message for any genuine aspiring agent, but anybody that's looking at the sort of role or I see so many people, even in our own game, who get up themselves and they start to become full of their own importance when in actual fact, to allow you to do the best possible job and the best possible negotiation for the player you're representing, they've always got to remain at the forefront. But it's not everybody that's got a nature to do that. It's you can see that in you. You can see how important that aspect is to you.
No, it's everything. It's everything. You've got to do the job professionally and correctly for the guy it's first, which is the player or the woman.
Yeah,
So, but I have seen at the other side where there's agents and then they get a wee bit carried away because they're dealing with
yeah,
these big guys and then they can lose it quite quickly.
yeah,
And look, everybody's different. But for me personally, I would never get away with my mates who are from Easter House. I
yeah,
would get away with a family and kept grounded. If I ever went, oh, hey, look, I was with this manager today or this famous footballer and I was
yeah.
trying to boast it, I'd probably have got my neck slapped. So
But seeing that very point, though, John. I mean, that's a great point. Like, how did, as obviously, the players you were representing maybe became bigger names, and the situation became more famous. You get to like deadline day, and your name's coming up on the ticker tape and Sky Sports. How did you find it? Like family and a lot of your friends reacted to that.
listen, I used to get a lot of stick time. It would be like, hello, I've just seen you in the telly. By the way, look at the size of your nose and all that. And by the way, look at you story. And that was a good story once, actually. I done a deal for a player called Nikola Zigic, who I took him from Valencia to Birmingham. And if you
Yeah,
remember this player, he's 6'7". And we're doing the press conference, and we got up from the press conference, and I'm only 5'6", he's 6'7". Needless to say, and by the
oh,
way, I just left
brilliant.
that meeting and jumped on a train to go down to London because it was transfer deadline day to do another
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And on the train, I got about 5 calls. Went, look at you! You mean my you look like he's going. You look at the size of you.
Oh,
And they
brilliant.
felt us for it because when we stood up, and the whole world must have went, what size is that wee guy? No, the size of the big guy. So no, I had the luxury of having. I still get the luxury of having great people run about me who are down to earth and never would ever get away with that. And look, it doesn't matter what anybody says. There is occasions where you're in amongst all these famous people and you feel, oh here, I'm Jack the lad. But
Yeah,
it always came back to me. It always came back to me. Hold on, calm down. Your Easter is John,
aye,
and
aye.
that kept me in a sort of a level playing ground, if you like.
I think a lot of that, and again, I'm not being patronising, but obviously, we've spoken about that. I've got a lot of family in Easterers as well, and all came from East End of Glasgow. I think that groundedness. I remember going to buy my first like majorly fancy car, and this is a true story. And it was down and you would know, and I'm not going to say the car, but it was at Douglas Parks, right in the corner in Hamilton, right? I know Douglas well. And I goes down to get this car, and the guy says, I'll take you for a test drive in it. So we go on the test drive, and I said, look, I'd like to go and pick my dad up and take him out in it, right? It's a true story. So I'm, right, you can imagine the sort of the car it is. So we goes down to pick my dad up. The guy's in the back. I'm driving the car. He's got a suit on, right? So that's the level of the deal. And my dad gets in the car, and I go to take off. And I swear to God, he turned and looked me straight in the face, and he said, you're no fucking seriously thinking of buying this, are you? Right? The guy's in the back. The guy's sitting in the back. He thinks he's got a
Can
deal
imagine.
done. Honest to God, that was his opening comment, and that was very much my dad. He was like that anyway. No material value. He valued people, and he valued
That's important.
moments. You know, he didn't value none of the rest of it mattered. It was people. That was just his nature. But I remember getting in my missus, how did it go? I said, imagine. She knew it was like, So, but see, sort of through that, John, the likes of deadline day, and obviously it's crucially important to players' careers and to their finances and their lives. How have you felt? I mean, do you get excited at deadline day? Or is it? I mean, it must be an incredibly stressful moment in some cases.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned is that the deadline day is only for the ones that don't really know what they're doing. For me,
Yeah,
when I'm getting involved, as soon as the window opens, I want to get my business done with the players that I'm trying to sell. So that's the good ones. But of course, you are on tender hooks in the last couple of days because anything can happen, and I mean anything. I've seen some wild things happening. So, but for me, I've learned over the years that be 6 months or a year ahead and plan so that you're not waiting till the end, the 31st, and panicking about selling your player or whatever. If you're good at your job, you should have your players in place for the first couple of weeks so that the club and the player are settling in for pre-season training. And that's what I aim for. If Tam says to me, right, okay, I'm out of here, you need to find me a club, I'm planning the year before, and I'm planning that you're not phoning me in deadline day saying, what's happening? Because that is stressful for the agent and the player.
Aye. That's brilliant advice. Do you know what I mean? And again, when you look at some of the best deals that are done, that you don't go to January sales at the end of January. You're there the first door opens, and it makes great sense. But also when you look at a lot of the managers that do good business, and I would imagine they're easier to deal with. That's how they conduct their business as well, and it's not a mad sort of slap panic at the last week of the window.
Damn it! Just yesterday, I was speaking to a manager who's doing a deal, and I'm pretty sure it will be done. And he'll be on his doors the first day the what do you call it, pre-season starts, and he's talking about it now.
Yeah.
No panicking. But he's an experienced manager, and he knows the story. He's away planning for his squad for 6 months or a year ahead, and it's good managers, good clubs, and also good agents that bring that together.
And see now, as the game's changed, John, over the years, obviously you've been in your role, and I would imagine. I mean, you look at the likes of even a game last night. There's 18-year-olds playing Champions Leagues, against Real Madrid for Liverpool, and the sort of the players now are that. I mean, they're athletes. It's completely different to when you and I were young. The guys finishing a game on a Saturday and straight to the booze, and the famous stories with like say Frank McAvenny and straight to London the night after a game and things like that. But how do you feel that the way the game's adapted, and obviously the pressures of social media, do you feel you need to have a more supporting role, especially dealing with younger players and how they conduct themselves and how they handle a lot of what's thrown at them?
I have to tell you, it is a totally different game from when the Frank McAvennies that we dealt with. Much more different. They seem to have handled it more and took everything on board easier and seemed to be more like men when they were 20, 21. It's a completely different world and a completely different way of the expectation of managing players these days. And if you just stepped out from 25 years ago and into football just now, you'd probably think you're coming into a different planet, and I'm sure you'll know that. Players are totally different. They need different needs. They've got different needs. They've got different aspects about dealing with agents and managers and coaches. It's a completely different world. And you have to adapt to be able to do business with them, because how I dealt with the Frank McAvennies 20 years ago is totally different from I'm dealing with that up-and-coming young striker at Celtic or wherever it may be.
Yeah.
It's totally different.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that these younger ones are needing more support.
Yeah.
They're needing more help. And it's just because it's changed days. They're such more complex. And that's probably the best way I could describe it. It's more, a footballer's more complex today, believe it or not. Albeit the basics are going to be there. You need to be fit and talented and have the right attitude and whatever. But there's a lot of outside sources there that are making it a lot more complex.
I think, I mean, obviously, a lot of the crux behind why I'm doing this, and I'm covering other sports as well, but it's actually the challenge that faces young people to make it professionally in your own industry as an agent, and also for a lot of the players who would be able to look at you and somebody with your level of experience. And it's great to hear, obviously, you share what, you know, what are probably, I think, a lot of maybe the challenges young players might be bottling up and don't know who to go to. And, you know, can they share it with their agent, or can they share it with a parent? And I think as well, John, you know, going back to what we're saying about parents influencing it. And again, I did, you know, I brought it up in one of the earlier podcasts. I had witnessed it when I was in London, seeing parents arguing, and an 8-year-old, and I remember a mother shouting an 8-year-old to F and half a kid in two. But it was, I could see the pressure, you know, and I'm not judging anybody, but I could see what it meant that this kid was in, and he was in academy football. And that's a pressure that you can't put on an 8, a 10, a 12-year-old kid's shoulders. But when they get to 16 and the window does open and the opportunity, maybe they could make it, it must be a hell of a pressure for a lot of young players when their parents are sitting looking over their shoulder to see if they're going to, you know, maybe they carry the financial responsibility of the family as an adult at 16 or 17. They're still only really a kid.
Yeah, could you imagine that when you're sitting and you're hearing your parents talking about, oh, we can't wait till he makes it at Crystal Palace, and we can't wait for a big house, and we can't wait because of where they are at the moment, and they're putting their money on the boy getting a contract, and the boy doesn't get a contract. Think how the boy feels in particular. He feels probably he's let the whole world down. And that's a real problem in the game. And for me, it's about, when it comes to these players or these kids, it's as much support as they can get and who's surrounding them. I look about who's surrounding them and what the parents, a lot of the parents are good and fantastic. And a lot of them just don't know how to deal with them. And a lot of the, I was just talking about this a few days ago, a lot of the parents, you know, are actually quite happy at age 18 and they go, John, he's yours now. That's your, passing him over to you. And believe it or not, something a lot of people don't talk about, Tam, is a lot of the kids get a bit of relief, like, right, my man and dad have picked me up since 7, took me to training, they're there all every game, hail, rain, snow. Now I'm a professional. I'm going to be with a professional that's going to guide me through the career. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't stop not talking to the parents. They're always part of the foundation about what we're doing. Because they know the boy better than me or the girl. But I've seen a sense of relief from young kids going, right, okay, so you're now going to be guiding me through my career. And we don't do it all, but good agents should know most of their players inside out. The big key is that they trust them enough that they could pick up the phone no matter what happens. That's the key to being a good agent, that they can pick up the phone and say, I've just fell out with my girlfriend. Or listen, I've just been done for speeding. Or by the way, the manager says that I'm shit, or whatever it may be. You need to have that relationship with your player that he can trust you, like maybe the way he trusted his parents as a kid.
I think that's it. You've summed that up really well. It's a crucial thing. I mean, I think you're probably nearly at a stage yourself, but that realisation, I think, for the player first and foremost, I think they feel then, John, that they're a professional when they've now got a professional looking after them. It's not that, you know, the reliability is no place in their parents. I think also it takes the pressure away. You know, I know even obviously our Maddox is in the UK and we're not there at this given time. And I miss not being at his games and stuff, but I love nothing better when he phones and reflects and tells us how the game went, and the happiness and sharing that was, you know, my sister goes, I think she's a harder face to please than I am, to be absolutely honest. She's worse than me, but you're absolutely right. That I think that realization of the player feeling like, wait a minute, you know, I'm a professional. I'm not a Wayne anymore. I'm a man or a woman, actually, is obviously the female side of the game's really exploded in the last couple of sort of seasons. But that sort of boy to man moment, and I think that's, again, another huge role that you guys play in helping that sort of bridge be crossed without the detachment of the parent that, well, you're on your own, you know. What it is you're stepping in and filling these shoes, but in a much more professional manner.
Well, it's a different job. You've got to remember you're talking about that bridge. When you get to the level, I mean, the way I look at it, I say, right, okay, Tim, you've done a magnificent job. You've brought up a great lad. He's worked hard. He's got all the right things about it. He knows what he's doing in the football sense. He's honest. He's done everything that you're ready. But you're ready to say, handing him over. He's 18 now. It's you to take him through the steps that how you would take players through the career. And I've done it hundreds of times from 18 to becoming internationals. So we know the steps, but most importantly, but we don't go, right, I don't want your phone number, take your phone number out my book. I might be phoning you and saying, listen, I've got a wee problem here. Can I get in the background a wee bit of help? So it's a team. It's a team effort. It's a team effort, and it always will be a team effort through his career. But there is a big bit, and I have to make this clear, that a lot of younger ones I've seen that went, right, I'm now with you, John. And they might tell me something and they might not tell their parents. Because it's just the nature of the beast. You've had teenagers, they might run about and tell somebody something that would never ever tell their parents. And we fall into that category quite a bit.
That's a compliment, as you know, as you say, and you've said it a couple of times, the word trust. And that's essential. And obviously, when that trust is there, I mean, for any teenager or young player, knowing full well they could phone and say, for instance, I've just been done for speeding. Who wants to phone and tell their parent that anyway? You know, you've only been driving it. We've all been there, you know. So
you can get them off the fine. Maybe that's the reason.
I know, aye, but it is. I mean, that's a real need, because that can be a fear at a young age. You know, it's the kind of things that, especially when, you know, I know myself, and it happened, you get pulled for the first time and you're thinking, oh God, how am I going to tell my dad? I'm getting 3 points, my license, and the insurance being what it is these days, all the worries. So having somebody like yourself, again, that for the things away from the field, because I think, and again, I'd be interested in what you think, but, you know, when you look at the likes of, you know, snooker and golf and football, and you look at all the real sort of top grade percentages that make it, in actual fact, there's an abundance of talent throughout football, throughout Scotland. The ones that do make it have got all the wee extra threads, you know, and the extra bits that kind of get them there. But again, a lot of what I'm going on to, or the sort of angle I'm going with this, is that, you know, if you can teach somebody something physically, then I think you can teach them it mentally. And the amount of times over the years, John, you'll have heard people saying, you know, the jersey was too big for him, and he could play in front of 5,000, couldn't he play in front of 50, you know? I genuinely think that could be managed. But again, one of the reasons I was so grateful when you said you would do this interview is because I think people like you are a big key difference in how that mentality is managed. You know, away for the pitch, not just the coach, not just their teammates.
No, it's mega. It's mega, because look, when I'm talking to I've been talking to a player at any age, and they're talking about the coaching and the experts are talking, but I've never been said, oh, you know, the coach has not played you or the manager's not played you. That's their department. That's the way I've always dealt with it. But when they were looking for the motivation about who they were and where they were trying to go, and the psychology, I talked to them. I didn't know I had that, but I did have it. And that helped me understand and them to trust me, and be able to sit with them and say, right, okay, what is your problem? Why do you think that you didn't get playing this week? And then get the real nitty gritty. It's because you didn't train hard enough, or it's because or whatever. And for me, having that, and you're using the right word, having that transparency and trust with each other is so important, that they can tell you anything. And I told them a lot of things about me that people didn't know. So it was a bond. They were like, oh, I didn't know that about you, John. Or, oh, wow, you know. So if you've got that trust with each other, that can only benefit them psychology about going forward, especially if you know how to get that out of them, Tim. I know everybody can. I know everybody's an expert. I certainly ain't any expert. But I've got the good grounding enough coming from where I come from to understand people like yourself. And that can only benefit them.
I think that human aspect to you, John. I mean, even obviously away from this, anytime I've spoke to you on the phone and knowing how you're with your nature, you've got such a natural warmth, and we always say that about sort of, Glaswegian people and how we were all chatty and all the rest of it, but I think, I mean this sincerely again, I think when you've got a young player who might not be able to express themselves so well or might feel under pressure. I can see it sometimes, Maddox, like if I'm there because I'm chattier than he is, it's sort of the question gets asked and he looks to me. But having again somebody like yourself who can encourage a boy or a lassie to open up a wee bit about them so that when the day come, the hour of need, when they need you, they know that you know them, really know them.
That's imperative, because let me ask you, Maddox makes it, and he's age 19. He's just played for Liverpool against Real Madrid, and he just scored a goal. Go, Maddox, how did that go? And he's looking for his dad. His dad's no there. You have to let them go. You have to let them grow up. You have to let them understand. And there'll be pitfalls, and there'll be things that will happen to them, but they need to learn a lot of that. And coming back to the agent's role, that's sometimes where they pick up the phone and say, "Listen, I'm going to get an interview at the weekend." They told me, how would I deal with that? Well, let's go through, and get them positive about trying to do that, or whatever it may be. They need that connection that maybe that you had when you've let them go.
And see, going forward now, John, I mean, obviously, because you do the academy and you're developing young agents, or agents, if not necessarily just young, but people who want to become agents, how do you envisage or hope that the agent's role continues to develop to help players and help the clubs?
No, that's a great question, because, in 2015, the legislation change meant that everybody and anybody could become an agent. So you filled in a form, and the next day you could say, I'm an agent. But unfortunately, it's a job. It takes years and years of practice to get it right. And trust me, I've been through that. I've been through all the mistakes, as I said earlier on. So for me, a lot of people came to us and said, John, I want to be an agent, because you just need to fill in a form now and send 600 quid or whatever. I said, right, but do you know what it takes? And that then started making me think, well, so many people are asking us, why don't we write a course on how to become an agent? And that's how it started. Myself, my son Johnny, my nephew Phil was my partner, and a few others just sat down and said, right, okay, how do you recruit a player? How do you deal with clubs? How do you identify players? How do you deal with the press? Blah, blah, blah. And we put this course together. And I'm telling you this because we were the first people to ever do it, and it was blown up worldwide. And see, if somebody had said to me that after 6 years of doing that, I would be sitting like I was on Sunday. I was sitting mentoring a young guy from the East End of Glasgow, saying, "No, you can become an agent." I would have thought, you're off your rocker. But I'm passing down 30 years of knowledge, and I want to pass it to people who want to do the job, and they need that information. They need that help. Just like young footballers, they need all it takes to become a football agent from somebody like myself, or courses or whatever. And I'm just loving passing it on to people. I'm loving teaching the wee guy for the Gallagher. He's saying, I don't think I could become a football agent. How no? I'm faced with it. The wee guy for the East End of London who's saying, that's only for people that are accountants and lawyers. Stop. This is for people who want to put their time and effort and passion into something. And I've made a guy that's a joiner, a football, he's a referee at 66, a young student, now a millionaire. I could go on a van driver, a lawyer, an accountant. In fact, I've not had a hairdresser yet. That's an unusual one. But the point I'm making is it can be done. And I'm crying from the rooftops to say, don't think this is only for people who are accountants or lawyers, but this is for people who have got the passion. But we've got a pathway that shows them how to do it, and that's the most important thing. I never had that, and now I'm passionate.
That's vital. I think that's. I mean, I've got it behind us. I write these motivational diaries, and see, when you were speaking there, I wrote a quote actually last year. It might be in one of the diaries that I posted at social media. And I wrote, wisdom is only wasted in the old. They all say wisdom's wasted in the old. And I wrote, wisdom is only wasted in the old when it's not passed down the line. And that's the crucial thing. We were the same, John, when we opened the academies. It was always vital to me. And again, a lot of the crux of why I'm doing this, that to try and explore the thinking of young people, to try and get them to explore their own thinking, to change their horizons, to, you know, where you came from isn't it shouldn't dictate where you go. Where you go is as wide as you can see, but you've got to be able to see it first.
That's right.
And I think the ability of somebody like yourself to share that is absolutely phenomenal, you know.
Here's the pathway. Here's a wee guy for Easterhouse, right? Who couldn't get a game of football, only got a game because he had a ball, right?
Aye.
And then came to here and then seen the pathway and seen the goals and seen the ways and got to here, get to here. That's me, no, that's just how it was.
Yeah.
And I want these people who have got that sort of the same vision and see the pathway to make it to there. Not to be thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm from the East End of London, I don't think I can do that. Oh, by the way, I'm from a bad area in Burnley, or I'm from Easterhouse or the Gallagher, or whatever it may be. That's not for me. Of course it is.
Yeah.
If I can do it, you can do it.
And are you finding, John, that people are coming for all over now? I mean, do they come to a website, or how do they get in touch with you, or how do you get the people that are coming to you wanting to be agents?
Well, first and foremost, they come to our website, and then after that, then we bring them onto webinars, and I talk the way I'm talking to you just now. I talk about, this is how it started, this is what you've got to do, this is what's involved, this is how you get there, and it's a full pathway that shows you right from going on to a webinar to thinking, wait, just now, maybe I'll stop cutting hair and I'll end up doing these big deals,
Aye.
I've never had hairdressers. I've never had one there. You may be my first.
Aye. It's, I ended up a few years ago, and again, like you're saying, and it's interesting from a personal perspective, because I can see a lot of the things you've said happen to me. I sort of ended up for about a year. It started out with one of my clients, a lassie that I'd got to know really, really well, came in one of the days, and I could just tell by her face something was genuinely wrong with her. And I said to her, look, you can tell me to piss off if you want. I said, I'm only asking you, and you know what it's like, what gets shared in a hairdresser's chair. I said, are you all right? She says, my boyfriend's just been released by Crystal Palace. Lovely boy I looked after for a few years, a boy called Kieran Cadogan. And Kieran he'd had an injury, and he had a wee bit of fought with the manager and different things. So anyway, he get released, quite undeservedly, but he get released. And I said to her, look, I've got clients that are footballers. If I can help, I'll try and help you, just because I could see the lassie was genuinely sort of really down, Anyway, the long and short was, obviously over the years, my friendship with Henrik, and a contact to a contact, I got the boy a 2-year deal in Sweden, and then to go out and act for him, right? So I went and done the transfer. I ended up studying just because of my own nature. I didn't want to let the boy do, and that's why a lot of the questions I'm asking is because I remember at the time emotionally, I went and met the boy, and his mother was on her own with him, and I mind looking into her eyes, and it was really interesting that you said that the way you said it right at the start of this interview. I mind looking into her eyes, and I could see no hope for financial reward for her, just hope for her boy being all right and being looked after. And I remember different senses of responsibility, and at the back of my mind, no wanting to let her down as much as no wanting to let the boy. And the boy ended up went out in a short-term contract and ended up getting a 2-year deal. And in actual fact, I took his cousin out there as well. But it was completely by accident. I was doing one of my clients a favour for her boyfriend, and all of a sudden, I found myself in Sweden with this boy signing, and it was just a bizarre situation.
So you're basically a part-time agent, is that what you're
telling me? And it was not, I wasn't trying to be an agent at all. I was just trying to help the boy, It was phenomenal. But again, I was dealing in very, very small sums of money, and I was just trying to help the boy, and please God, it did help him. But obviously the scale that you've sort of grown into, John, it's a different planet. And nowadays, if you had sort of in two key areas of the question, if I was saying to you as a young player, if a young player was looking at an agent saying, I wonder what an agent looks for in me, what would, if there's any way of summarising that, what would you say?
Well, look, first and foremost, when a young player is going to look for an agent, I think it's quite important that they do their research. That's the first thing. Because I've found that a lot of agents pressurise a young boy into signing a contract. So when somebody phoned me the other week there and says, right, John, I'm looking for an agent, and if it's no you, what do I look for? I said, well, the very first thing, go and look for maybe somebody that's had a wee bit of experience at least, right? That's a key part. Somebody that you've got to meet them and meet them face to face and get a feeling for yourself to see whether you trust them, because that trust has to be, you'll get that in your first meeting normally.
Yeah.
Go and find out what their connections are like. I think that's really important,
Yeah.
Go and do a background search on them, find out what their connections are like, find out how many deals they've already done.
Yeah.
Because, look, we're teaching new agents, and the hardest part is getting the first deals done. And that's a big milestone they have to go over.
Yeah.
Right. But if I'm saying what they'll be looking for an agent, looking for somebody that you really trust, somebody you like, because you're going to have to be dealing with them for a while, right?
Yeah.
Somebody you like, somebody you trust, somebody you know that's got good connections, and somebody you feel, right, that's, you want to be coming away from a meeting saying, that's something I feel that I could actually go and pick up the phone to you,
Aye.
even after meeting them for the first time. But mainly do your background checks on who they are and what they're all about. And that will help you determine, rather than just jump in
That's your
and
agent.
sign with anybody right away. So that's probably the best. And again, it doesn't always have to be the experienced guy like me. I've been up against young agents and they've beat me signing a player because
Yeah.
they felt, the affinity with them. So you
Yeah.
don't always
Yeah.
think it has to be,
Aye.
I
The
might be doing
experienced
a
guy.
service here. But
Aye.
it's more about the connection you get with that person.
Aye.
And it's a bit like somebody come to your hairdresser for the first time and they go, do you know what? He cuts the hair just as good as the guy across the road, but I got a connection with him. I'm going
Aye.
back to him. So it's that's the biggest thing when they're looking at an agent. Trust is
That
massive thing.
that's John. That's absolutely true. You've touched it. We actually. I'm not going to derail it, but we won an award on just what you've said. What we used to do, we'd calculated a statistic in every 10 people you meet in life. And I'll very quickly just say, so every 3 will automatically like you because you remind them of your brother-in-law, a boy you grew up with, or whatever. So 3 people will give you more than a fighting chance. But the same token, there'll be 3 that don't like you. Doesn't matter what. So they'll
That's
remind you of
shoulders.
your
That's shoulders.
sister's ex-boyfriend or something like that. And then the other 4 were negotiable. So what we used to do when we would get a new client, we used to look that we would be guaranteed getting 7 every 10. But what we crucially used to do is, say, for instance, a client come in and he would say, do you know what? That maybe would be somebody that's not going to have that connection with me, but they'd have that connection with John. So we tried to gain that extra 3 by pairing them to the right person.
That makes
And we
sense.
ended up with a 93% return rate. As
Wow.
we won an award at the Scottish Business Awards. But that's how we managed it. And what we tried to do was pretty much make that match which you've just described, and it is absolutely vital to make sure that the experience is a long and healthy one and a genuinely healthy one, and it's brilliant. That
One of
what
the
you've
things
summed up is it's crucial.
that was just came to my mind there, Tom. One of the things is, I hear a lot of players saying, when they're going to an agent, I say, well, how did you get on? Because I'm talking to them, the guys that I'm teaching, or the guys that work for me. How did you get on when you were trying to sign Tam? And they say, well, it went well, I think, And when I'm teaching them, and sometimes I go along to meetings to help them, when I'm talking to a new player, the very first thing I say, look, before we start here, there's no guarantees about what I can do for you. All I can do is give you who I am, the best I can do. And he says, but I've just met somebody last week. He says he can take me to Real Madrid. I said, wow. I said, there's only one person taking you to Real Madrid, and it's you by what you do on the pitch. I'm off the pitch. So when I'm going to meet somebody, I'm trying to get that expectation sorted right away. An agent can only help you if you do the job on the pitch. So my first foundation part is, see, if you're going to do what I think you can do on the pitch, then I can help you with A, B, C, D, which is take you to all these connections that I have throughout my life. But I can't do that if you don't train right, eat right, psychologically be right, and do the job on the pitch. You have to do that bit first for me to do that. So when I'm going to sign a new player, I say to them, look, I've got players to Real Madrid of this world, but they've only done it because they done their bit. They got the transfer, no John Viola. Does that make sense?
That's brilliant advice. Absolutely brilliant advice, John. That's it in a nutshell, which is absolutely brilliant. And if I could say to you, if you were obviously you are teaching a lot of agents and you're working with new agents, if you had somebody who had the genuine ambition for the right reasons to become an agent, what sort of advice would you be suggesting to them?
Well, the very first thing I'd be suggesting, bear in mind, it's not an easy job, right? So don't think you're going to get a get rich quick scheme.
Yeah,
It's certainly not that, and we talk about that in our webinars. if you're genuinely interested in football, you're genuinely interested in helping people. So let's forget it's football. You're just thinking, there's that person. I want to take him from there to there because he's got that talent and I want to work alongside him. Then the satisfaction you'll get of that will be amazing. Watching them score a goal, score a hat trick, pulling on a shirt, the shirt maybe the team you support, or maybe the team you don't support, or whatever it may be. That is unbelievable. But my biggest thing is right away, you need to be in your blood and your DNA that you think you can put the time and effort in. Be prepared that there's a lot of rejection. Be prepared there's a lot of hard work in it. But I've taken people from the chat that we're having into doing Premier League football business in the last 6 years, and it can be done. But my advice is don't think it's a walk in the park. My advice is be prepared for hard work. My advice is, get the right advice about who you're going to work with, who you're going to deal with, or where you're going to get the information from, i.e., again, somebody that is not just me that's involved with mentoring or courses. Get that education about how to do the job under your belt on top of all these other things I've said, and it could work for you.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The very final thing I just want to touch on, John, I'd like to ask you is obviously the women's game is... Aye, I know, we're Indian. But the women's game's changed, obviously, and is becoming more and more professional by the day. But how do you view that? Obviously, it's been right through your career, all these changes have came about. How do you see the development of the women's game in the next coming years?
I watched a documentary last night about women in Scotland and how they changed Scotland, and it was a wee section on it about women's football when the SFA didn't even accept them into the game. They wouldn't even let them play on pitches, and that's progressed to there to people who are now, if you look at today, how they're playing at the highest levels. How I see it is that it will never be men's football, I don't think. It'll never be at that level, but it's grown dramatically. I can see it through the roof. I think it could be I could go anywhere, because if you look at the attendances, you look at the sponsorship, and you look at the money that's come into it, you look at the clubs that have got professional leagues now, it's going in a direction that I don't think people will realise in 5 years from now. It will be unbelievable. And I remember 5 years ago, we interviewed an ex-England international to come and work with us in our business, and it didn't happen. And she's now went on and she's working for a big company in London, doing exceptionally well. And I had a chat with her just a few weeks ago about, how it's went from where the discussion only 5 years ago, where she was talking about bringing in wee players here and there, to the Chelseas, the Arsenals, the Celtics, the Rangers, blah, blah, blah. And I only see it as something super positive for football in general.
Brilliant. John, it's been an honest and absolute pleasure talking to you. It's really great. And I mean, the experience that you can share and that you have shared is genuinely invaluable, and it's not often that, again, I look at it, not just for our Maddox, but I've got a lot of young players I talk to on a very frequent basis. And I absolutely, for sure, will be, on them to make sure they listen to this, because I think it is a completely different perspective. A couple of points that you picked up on that really struck me, and being that, you're not sitting interfering with what the coach says, and that role that you play and being able to just kind of saddle between the coach and the parent, and obviously what you do as a support mechanism is different class. It's absolutely phenomenal. And it's a reason why you're as successful as you are and why you're so well thought of by any of the people that I know that know you on a personal basis and a professional basis. Thanks for watching the latest episode of Making It Pro. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Look forward to sharing the next episode soon.